You're at the pharmacy to purchase medication. There are two boxes on the shelf. One is obviously the original brand, and the other the generic version of the drug. Which do you choose? Decide. Shopping brand name items is nice, and for many things, we prefer to drop big bucks on recognized manufacturers than on little-known brands. Indeed, for clothing and other such items, one can understand the preference. However, what about when there isn't a flashy tag or label? What about when purchasing medication? Do you still reach for the brand even if there is a cheaper version? Many people are distrustful of generic medications to the extent that they will not purchase it, even if it's cheaper than the original version. Their reservations may be due to the numerous myths touted about generic versions of drugs. In this video, we're going to bust some of the myths associated with the brand name drugs and their generic counterparts. So don't skip the video and watch till the end, and make sure you subscribe to my channel. Myth number 1. Generic drugs are not as safe as brand name drugs. Myth number 2. The original drugs are better. Generic medicines are not as effective, and they take longer to work. Myth number 3. Generic drugs are substandard, which is why they tend to be less expensive. Myth number 4. Brand name drugs have fewer side effects than its duplicate. Myth number 5. Only one company can make a generic drug. Myth number 6. Brand name drugs are manufactured in better quality facilities than generic drugs. Myth number 7. It is unsafe to switch between the original drug and the generic. What is a generic drug? A generic drug is identical, or bioequivalent, to a brand name drug in intended use, dosage, strength, effectiveness and safety. For a generic drug to be approved, it must meet the same quality standards as the brand name product. Even the generic manufacturing, packaging, and testing sites must meet the same standards. Many generics are produced in the same manufacturing plant as their branded counterparts. Are generics as effective as the brand? Yes. Generic drugs are required by the Food and Drug Administration (FDA) to have the same active ingredient, strength, dosage form, and route of administration as the branded product. The FDA ensures this via thorough testing and review of bioequivalence data. So how exactly does a generic drug differ from a brand? The major difference between a generic and brand name drug is the price. Most generics cost 70% to 90% less than the brand, thereby saving consumers an estimated $8 billion to $10 billion a year at pharmacies. Billions more are saved by hospitals using generics. A generic drug also may differ from a brand in terms of shape, color or packaging, but these differences only affect how the medicine looks, not how it works. Why are generics cheaper? Brand name drugs are expensive because they don't have any competition to drive their price down. But when patents on brand name drugs near expiration, other manufacturers can apply to the FDA to sell generic versions. Because the generic manufacturers are not required to repeat costly clinical trials and generally do not incur advertising, marketing and promotional costs, they're able to sell their product for much less. Conversely, companies that make brand drugs have often spent huge amounts on research, development and advertising, and must price their drug at a cost high enough to recoup their spending and turn a profit. Additionally, when more than one company makes generic versions of a drug, it creates competition in the marketplace, further lowering prices. These savings are passed on to you, the consumer, in the form of lower copays. According to WHO, use of generic medicines significantly reduces the cost of medicines to both governments and patients. Generic medicines are those produced without a license from the innovator company when the patent or other market exclusivity rights on the innovator product has expired. A striking example of the impact of generics is the evolution of prices on the antiretroviral market. The median price per patient per year of first-line ARV therapy dropped from about $10,000 to less than $100 with the introduction of generic FDCs, enabling the scaling up of access to antiretroviral therapy from 0.5 million people on ARVs in 2003 to 15.8 million globally in 2015. So if generic drugs are so great, why are brand name drugs prescribed at all? By law, generic drugs cannot be sold until the brand name drug's patent expires, which could take 10 years or more. Brand names are prescribed in cases where generic versions are not yet available. Hope you enjoy the video. And one thing, my friend, nothing lasts forever. Not even the coronavirus. So stay home, stay safe and fight hard.